Hello, everybody. It is, well, first of all, I'm Del Hungerford with Healing Frequencies Music. And today is a very cold May day in North Idaho. So I am bundled up and staying warm. Yes, I could light a fire, but there's something about the end of May and you don't want to light a fire. Anyway, this is the third follow-up to the periodic table series. And what I've decided to do is just take you down my journey of figuring stuff out. A lot of what is being discovered now is outside the realm of standard science or standard thinking. And the example that I've used up to this point, excuse me, got to make an adjustment here, is when I discovered the musical frequencies of the Hebrew letters. I had it sitting right in front of me for 2 years before I realized what it was. When we get into a box where we have a specific way that we're thinking, then we're not going to see something that is obviously sitting in front of us. And I've said before, I believe that's where science is right now. Which is really kind of sad. Academia is in the same place because if someone doesn't agree exactly with you or has a slightly different idea than you do, they come charging at you. And I first saw this when I was writing my dissertation, because I was using techniques to look inside the mouth while people were playing clarinet and using a fiber optic laryngoscope to do it so that you could watch the movement of the tongue, because there's no way that you can really tell what's going on there. All you could do is explain. And so I'm sending surveys to all the clarinet professors around the entire United States. And the nastiness that I got back shocked me. But what I was proposing was very different than what was the standard model. And people tend not to want to change their standard model because in their mind, if they change, then everything they've taught up to that point is incorrect. But that's not necessarily the case. I'm finding that when we do change our mind and when we do see something from another perspective, that's not putting the stuff before away. It's expanding the knowledge and understanding of how that led to something new. So I think because of that experience, it kind of opened my eyes to make sure that I am paying attention to things that I don't agree with. Because more than likely, the reason I'm disagreeing is I have a wrong paradigm of what that thing is really about. And I'm going to walk you through my process of how I figure out things, where I begin, and where my determination comes from when choosing what I think is working. And we're going to use the periodic table of elements because that is my most recent journey. Now, I am not a scientist. I never took chemistry. Math is not my favorite subject. I have to work really hard at it, but I have people alongside me who can help me figure things out when I need to. My piece, as I said before, is the musical aspect and taking what others are finding and say, does this line up musically? And so that takes us into our PowerPoint presentation. You know, we got to have a fun PowerPoint. All right, so now I'm going to share screen and hopefully you are going to be right at my, I'm on the thank you page. I need to go back to the beginning. It's a very good place to start. Come on, there we go. Now we want to go to, I didn't have my slideshow ready. And it takes a minute to get there. All right, let us begin. Be prepared for the curtain. Drum roll, please. If it's going to do it, there we go. There's the curtain. And I'm going to move my cute little picture up a little bit. And my mouse is not working. Okay. The first thing that we have to look for are patterns and cycles and natural laws. If there's not a pattern, or there's not a cycle, or something doesn't fit within a natural law, chances are it needs to sit on a shelf until we find a pattern, a cycle, and a natural law. And I think these three things work together. All right, moving along to the next one. The progression. Everything in the universe is based on cycles. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with that. Where there's a cycle, that's when we begin to look for patterns. And we compare those patterns with a variety of disciplines. And I always say you get bonus points when the patterns line up with disciplines such as cosmology, math, music, archaeoacoustics. That is a new science that I absolutely love, because you've got musicians and archaeologists and geologists, cosmologists. You have all of these disciplines working together to come up with solutions. You even have acoustic physics people that are involved in acoustics. You have all of these people working together, and they've come to some amazing discoveries because they're willing to get outside of their box. And when they don't understand something, they find a person in another discipline who can tie the dots. That's what I'm after. Okay, next slide. Musical patterns. Everything in music is based on the harmonic series. Musical keys and tuning are cyclical and fit within patterns. Everything in music has a pattern. Doesn't matter what scale, what arpeggio, whatever. There's always a cyclical thing, which means it's repeating, and there's always a pattern. And the other thing, octaves are synonymous with cycles because they're repeating. They go over and over. That's a cycle. Okay, I'm going to just do a couple of things here to explain the laws of music, because we're going to need to see this when I talk about the periodic table. So tuning is in the eye of the beholder. And it's been that way. I mean, you can go to theses and books and all kinds of writings. You've got tuning forks, all of this stuff from as far back as the 1400s and how people dealt with music. So unfortunately, we're kind of put into the box of equal temperament, but I understand the reason for it. To tune each interval perfectly, notes must be tempered. That means you can move them up or down and you adjust them. Musicians naturally adjust pitches depending on where a note sits within a chord. And I'll explain that here a little bit more with this cute little visual on the right. There are a variety of tuning methods. No one is better than another. You go back to point number one. Tuning is in the eye of the beholder. You know, someone should write a song about that. We follow the same natural pattern of tuning as the ancients did. Now, there's some who like to make you believe that's not true, but there are natural laws. Your physical being wants to entrain, come into agreement with the natural laws of music, which is why some things sound more pleasant than others. Good musicians intuitively use natural laws of tuning because only keyboards and fretted instruments, they're the only ones that can't make adjustments. That's an awkward sentence, sorry. All other musical instruments can adjust tuning, but keyboards and fretted instruments can't unless you stop and retune. But in the middle of performance, all other instruments can make adjustments. There was never a tuning standard until 1939. Sorry, those of you who still believe that Hitler had anything to do with it, there's plenty of evidence to show that he didn't. Anyway, so there was never a tuning standard until 1939 when it was set to A440. Now I'm going to give the example of when I did that 528 Creative DNA album. I played clarinet with it. My clarinet is made to play in A440. Well, I can play up to A444, A445. Depends on how warm my instrument is. The warmer a clarinet gets, the sharper it will play. The colder it gets, the flatter it's going to play. Humidity will also affect it as well. So for this particular album, I put on a short barrel. I spent a long time warming up. And then by the end of the entire album, that song that I played it on, the clarinet on, I was sharp. And I was doing all kinds of fingerings to shade to bring the pitch down. So I'd actually gone from A440 to about A445 and was playing sharp because I was getting too warm. So that's an example of how you can go up and down. And as I heard I was playing sharp, I was able to use fingerings that brought the pitch down. And so now we go and explain this. Here you see, this is the bass or the root. This is a C, the second note is an E, this is a G, and this is a B. This is the 7th degree, so that is 7 notes above this C. This is 3 notes above the C. This is 5 notes. We're going to be talking a lot about thirds. In this case, it's a major third, but if you go from E to G, it is a minor third. When I am, let's say I'm in an orchestra or some ensemble, and the main note, the chord is the C chord, and I'm playing this third. I have to temper that note. I have to bring it down in pitch in order for it to be in tune. Now, let's say this all of a sudden it becomes an A minor triad and you put an A here. Then the E, that same E becomes the 5th. I have to raise that E up, which means I have to change fingerings or do something on my clarinet in order to make that E work as a perfect 5th. But I have to lower it when the E is the major third. So this is what I'm talking about. We're always tempering depending on where the note sits within the chord. And that's important to keep track of as we talk about the periodic table. So yeah, this is geeky music moment that hopefully non-musicians or non-classical musicians, I guess, or people who don't understand music theory, this might explain slightly what we're going to go into next. Beyond music. Musical frequencies of the Hebrew letters fit within the harmonic series perfectly. And as I said before, I had the thing sitting in front of me for 2 years that I had an expectation of what I thought it was supposed to look like. Once I changed my paradigm, all of a sudden there it was, and my eyes went, I had an aha moment. And scientists need to start doing more of that. Get outside your box, please. Colors can be lowered enough octaves where they become a musical frequency. I believe it's 40 octaves. I could be wrong. So you take the nanometers and you divide it by 2, keep dividing by 2, dividing by 2, until you get down into a hertz range. Many musicians hear music in colors, and someone very nicely posted it was synesthesia in the first video because I asked that question, but now I'm answering it. It's synesthesia. Things in nature fit within harmonic laws just like music. That's where you get the Fibonacci series. That's where you get the Mandelbrot set. All of these things, they fit within natural harmonic laws. And music also follows harmonic laws. Russell Smith's periodic table frequencies fit within the cycles and patterns of music. Okay, I've been researching the periodic table for a very long time. Just because, you know, like I know music connects to all these other things. My findings for the frequencies of creation coincide with several disciplines: archaeoacoustics, cymatics, crop circle formations, ancient sites, the Big Bang, etc. And the periodic table, Russell Smith's periodic table, fits perfectly into that. Walter Russell's, not yet, because what people are saying about it needs changing. So we are moving to the periodic table. Here is your standard periodic table elements. It's kind of cute, you know, all those cute little colors. Here is Walter Russell's periodic table, which, as you can see, and I've shown this in the last 2 videos, you've got all this weave that's moving around, and all the elements from the lightest element to the heaviest are listed this way. And of course, you know, he's talking about positive and negative charging, and, you know, that stuff, that is not mine to deal with. That is for people who understand the periodic tables. I am looking at the musical frequency piece. Here is Russell Smith's periodic table. And as you will see, I put the musical notes here that go with it. He is putting them according to their subshells. Whereas this previous one, let me go back to that slide. Oops, 2 away. These are according to their periods. Those colors are according to the periods. All right. So let's go back to this one. And you're going to see these are the D subshells. These are the P subshells. The red are the S subshells and the yellow are the F subshells. And that's where we move from here. Which one fits the laws of music? Walter Russell's periodic table may work, but more understanding is needed. Now that I know that octave is synonymous with cycle, because Terrence Howard in the Joe Rogan interview called it an octave, and I was super confused because it wasn't working. Then after reading a bunch of Walter Russell's work, I realized, oh, he is using the word octave, but he really means cycle. And this leads to the thing in the purple box. The problem lies within word meanings. And I've listened to a lot of people talk about Walter Russell's work. And the problem with it is the terminology that he's using is 100 years old and might have made sense to people back then, but it's not making sense to us now as we're looking at it. As an example, octave and cycle mean the same thing, even though he was using a musical term, but we all understand that octaves are cycles. So I can understand why he used that word. Russell Smith's periodic table fits perfectly within the laws of music. And I'll show you that here in a minute. Russell Smith's periodic table also fits within my research on the frequencies of creation. So we got two connecting dots right there. When you find a pattern, follow it. Understanding Smith's periodic table. Elements at the end of the table are heavier, and the heavier elements are going to have lower musical pitches. That makes sense. Elements at the beginning of the table are lighter, and the lighter elements have higher musical pitches. Find the patterns and cycles. So what I did, and I'm going to walk you through my process here. You check the musical intervals, you check the chord structure, and look for the cycles and the patterns. Here is the roadmap showing the subshells and the ratios that he used along with the hertz. So the hertz are in the middle in this kind of purplish color. And then the subshells are the colors. So the prime family is all in red. I'm sorry, the supreme family is in red. The prime family is in green. I can't remember what the blue one is. I'd have to go back and look. I can look at my notes here real quick so that I can, because I have a book that is full of all of this stuff. So the blue is the distant family, and then the yellow is the final family. You know, I have to refresh my brain on the periodic table. What I did is let me go back to this. I took all of these hertz frequencies, 1296 to 1080. Took 1290. So I went in the order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we're 7, 7, 8. I did it in the order that he also did it. Okay. I opened up two tone generators and input those pitches in there and listened for the interval that came out. Now, if you've not had ear training, which we used to call ear training in college, then it might be hard to determine what that actual interval is. And an interval is a distance between two notes. So I used the specific ratios translated to hertz in R. Smith's chart. I opened up two tone generators. I input the first frequency and I play it. I input the second frequency in the second tone generator and I played it. And then I listened for the interval it created. And then I wrote the interval down and the musical note that it corresponded to. And there's several charts. The problem with it is, you know, which version are you using? I knew that they started with 1 hertz as the base. So I knew that was in the 432 concert pitch. So I have it's in another book. Modified Pythagorean ratios tuning chart in 432 concert pitch. And I was able to assign the notes from there. Here is my little chart where I turned the hertz into actual note names. And you're going to see that the supreme family goes between the 430 and the 432 concert pitch. Why is that? Because you have to temper the intervals. And there's hardly any difference between those. The 7-piece subshell pretty much stays in A430. Now, in the very first one of these, I had this as 450, but then I went back, redid my research, and realized I had some typos in there. So we're anywhere between the 430 and the 434 concert pitch. And what this ends up doing is when you're following the do ti la or la ti do thing that he talks about in his research, it literally takes you back to 2 octaves lower than this original E up here. Okay, so then we've got the distant family is pretty much in the A434 concert pitch. The final family is also in the A434 concert pitch. So it's going back and forth. But again, the reason you do that is you have to temper that silly major third. And you're going to notice that G to B is a major third, B to D is a minor third, D to F sharp is a major third, F sharp to A is a minor third, A to C sharp is a major third, C sharp to E is a minor third. And so hopefully that'll help you understand what I've got there. Here's the roadmap. So if you go back to this and you build chords, G, B, D, B, D, F sharp, D, F sharp, A, F sharp, A, C sharp, A, C sharp, E. Same thing over here, E, G, B, G, B, D. Those are all chords, all right? And these are the chords that they play. So the very first one is an A major triad in the supreme. Then you have a C sharp minor. Then you have an E major. Then a G sharp minor, which we don't use G sharp minor. Well, we can, but you can also call it A flat minor. And then a B major. And you're noticing it's alternating between major and minor. The prime chords are F sharp minor, A major, C sharp minor, E major. The distant chords, G minor, B flat major. The final chord is G sharp. You know what? I think, hold on. I might have this wrong. This is my transposed version of it. Interesting, because I transposed it to the key of F sharp. So this is a step higher. I thought I had. So let's go back to here for a moment. These are, so you have a G major triad, a B minor, a D major, D, F sharp, A, F sharp minor, F sharp, A, C sharp, A major over here. Then here you got your F sharp minor, so F sharp to A, that's indicating it's minor. Here you got your F major or F minor, and then A flat major. Here you have E, G, B is an E minor, G, B, D is a G major, B, D, F sharp is a B minor, D, F sharp, A is a D major. So you're seeing that you've got it. This version I have here is actually translating it to the key of F sharp, because I wanted to see what it would look like if you did it in the key of F sharp. It's going to still alternate major and minor. So major is uppercase, minor is lowercase. Concert pitch meanders between A430 to A434. Modern musical instruments can play between A440 to A444, depending on temperature and humidity. Pianos and keyboards and guitars, the only way that you can make adjustments is to stop, retune, and then start over. The reason concert pitch shifts is to bring the major third and the minor third into pure intervals where there's no beating. Here's a side-by-side comparison. Using, here I just put it in this format. This is Russell Smith's format. And you're going to, I'll show you some comparisons here. Now this is where you look for more patterns. I'm seeing we've got all these major and minor triads. That's obvious by looking here. We got major and minor thirds are the key component. That is continuous all the way throughout. So that pattern works, that cycle works. Now let's look for more. What do we see here? Chords are evident between subshells from the bottom to top when moving diagonally from the left to right. So here you see F sharp, A, C. That is that's a diminished triad. Then, so C, E flat, G flat, that is also a diminished triad. F sharp, A, C sharp, that is a minor triad. So you're seeing, and then here, there you go, D, F sharp, A, there's major, F, A flat, C flat, that would be a diminished triad. So we're going to have not just your major, not just your minor, but you're going to have your diminished and augmented as well. Chords are evident when moving from left to right. So let's go here, G, B, here, A to C sharp. So that's an A major triad. D, F sharp, A, that's a D major triad. G, B, D, F sharp, that is a G major 7. Here we've got our first augmented triad. Here is another, this is a G augmented, this is an E augmented, and here, you know, if you want to go F, A, and then do the C up there, then you've got your F major triad. All right. Next, the circle of fifths is evident when moving diagonally from left to right. G to D. D is the fifth of G. A is the fifth of D. E is the fifth of A. So that's the circle of fifths moving in sharps. So 1 sharp, 2 sharps, 3 sharps, 4 sharps, 5 sharps, 6 sharps, 7 sharps. There's your circle of fifths in the sharps. G, D, A. Now here it's, same thing. D is the fifth of G. A is the fifth of D. E to B. B is the fifth of E. And F sharp is the fifth of B. A flat to E flat. E flat is the fifth of A flat. C is the fifth of F. And these two aren't working that way. So we've got 3 separate patterns that are obviously evident. You've got chords, you've got intervals, and you've got the circle of fifths. Not all of them, but most of them, just in this, in Russell Smith's diagram. So that's telling me we're onto something. We found patterns and we found cycles. Subshells 18, 13, and 17. That's this one, 18, 13, and 17. These are the octaves. And I said subshells because this should be 4F, this should be 5F. So that's why I said the numbers. So they match the minor third that morphs into the major third heard at the beginning of creation. And that refers to the Mark Whittle, I think it's Whittle, video in the, if you go, I'll be putting the link below this video to the Frequencies of Creation series, part 7, where you can go find that video. And he talks about the sound that started as an F sharp, then it morphed into the minor third, which then becomes the major third. So we don't know if it went F sharp to A sharp, or if it went from F sharp to A and then went from F to A. He didn't say that. But here you've got your minor third and you've got your major third, which fits exactly what Mark Whittle was saying. I found that fascinating. So there's another connection. What do we see in this? Intervals alternate between major and minor thirds. Remember, the lowest note starts at the bottom. So this is a lower pitch than this, because the heavier elements are they're going to be in the lower subshells, or with the higher numbers. Chords can be built starting from any notes, from all notes within the family. But the supreme family, what happens here is you go G, B, D, B, D, F sharp, D, F sharp, A, C sharp, E, C sharp, E, G. That is a chord, but none of the others work that way. And I thought that was kind of fascinating. So there's something about the supreme family that's different than the others. So those of you who are physicists and chemists, I would like to know what makes the supreme family different than the prime, distant, or final. That there's that cyclical thing that's going on. Because these other three families don't do that. Because once you get to F sharp to A, and then you go to E, in order to get that next note, this has to be some form of C, and it's not. This one, F, A flat, C. So if you do C flat, C, E flat, it would have to be some form of G. So that's why it doesn't go around. This one would have to be some form of C to finish it off. Anyway, so that's what I was noticing there. The last note A in the final family, which is 4F, hints at the perfect fifth in the supreme family E. So this A is the dominant. I'm sorry, the E here is the dominant of this A. A, C sharp, E. It's the fifth note of the A triad. So there is a connection, but again, that's going back to the circle of fifths that we saw earlier. So even there are connections. So the more I look at this, the more connections I'm seeing that line up musically. I just don't know how that fits within the periodic table itself. This could be in any key. A little transposition is possible to double check. And like I said, that other image that I put up with the families and all the different chords, that was in the wrong key. That was in the key of F sharp. Because I did it for F sharp and then obviously put the wrong one in there. So what I did is I just transposed every one of these to a different key because I wanted to see what it would look like if the fundamental was F sharp, not an E. And would that make any difference with the other frequencies in creation that I'm seeing in ancient sites, that I'm seeing at the beginning of creation itself? So sometimes it helps just to see the notes differently. The intervals are all the same, but the note names have changed because I've moved it from the key of E to the key of F sharp. So all of these are one step higher. So you notice here in 5P, this is a B, but 5P, it's a C sharp. It's one full step higher. So I literally transposed it up a step. So my conclusion, we'll let that one fly away. Of all the different options for assigning musical frequencies to the periodic table, Russell Smith's version is the strongest candidate because it has the most cycles, it has the most patterns, it fits within other things I'm finding in the frequencies of creation. So there has to be something to it. I might not understand it. I get the music part. I don't get the science part. But someone else who is much better at science can connect the pieces, just like the archaeoacousticians working with geologists, working with acoustic specialists, and acoustic specialists working with musical performers who can say, oh, well, that's just this interval, that is this key. So we need us all to work together. Why do I find it's the strongest candidate? There's a cycle. Why? There's patterns are evident all the way throughout. Why? There's consistency between the families. Smith's table lines up with musical interval patterns with the frequencies at the beginning, the minor third and the major third. So you'd have to read the first part 1 in the series of the frequencies of creation. And if you start from 1 and go all the way through 7, you're going to see some of the things I'm talking about. Walter Russell's musical periodic table, and this is the one that Terrence Howard was speaking about with Joe Rogan, it may fit into a different type of pattern, but I haven't discovered it yet because I spent so much time trying to figure out, well, how do these octaves work? They're not working. And then after reading a bunch of other things, I'm like, oh, he's not meaning literal octaves. Well, I think Terrence Howard thought it was, but I don't think that's what Walter Russell's intention was. I think his intention was because he doesn't understand music. He's not a musician. He just didn't understand the terms. Remember to look for patterns, cycles, and natural laws. When you have all of those three things working together, you're onto something. Keep going down the rabbit trail. All right, that takes us to the final slide. Thank you for this presentation. If you subscribe to the Healing Frequencies YouTube channel, you'll continue to get notifications. Be sure to read the Frequencies of Creation series, which is in the link below. And I appreciate it when people send me interesting articles, because these last 3 videos I've done came because so many people sent me that interview because they knew I was researching the periodic table. And that's the part I paid attention to. The rest of it, I listened to the whole interview. It was fascinating. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but it doesn't have to make sense to me. That'll make sense to someone else. My website is healingfrequenciesmusic.com, and you can use the contact us form on the website. It's way in the upper right-hand corner, up above the header. Then you'll see FAQ, fact, contact us, and there's several places that you, and if you go, there should be other places on the website where you can do it as well. Now I'm going to stop sharing screen. All right, that ends this installment of the information on the periodic table. But I use this as an example to explain to people my process of discovering what works and what doesn't work, or what doesn't work. I am not throwing out Walter Russell's periodic table, but it's not the same as Russell Smith's. If there are musical patterns, it's not based on the octave. That much we do know, the musical octave, but it might be based on the octave, the cycle octave, which I haven't found because I need to spend more time researching that. But as I've said in all the other videos, just because we don't understand what Terrence Howard said, and even if you're a scientist and you think the guy's fallen off the latest turnip truck that came into town and got lost, don't throw it away. There are gems. Find the gems, figure out where they fit, and then look at those. Because I said in the last video, even Einstein was made fun of. Tesla was hugely made fun of. And all of the forward thinkers now, they're looking at things from a totally different perspective because scientists and academics have not gotten beyond their specific discipline. And I'll share one example of that. When I was working at the University of Idaho, which I spent a lot of time there, working with students in different living groups, there were people who were nutrition majors and they had to do all this stuff. And I'm like, well, I assume if you're a nutrition major, you're learning how to cook. And I'd get the deer in the headlights look. And I'm like, how in the heck can you be a nutrition major and not learn how to cook? To me, the two are synonymous. They go with one another. So why? I mean, that was 20 years ago. So I have no idea if that program has changed so that nutrition majors have to learn to cook. It's like electrical engineers are electrical engineers. Mechanical engineers are mechanical. And it's like they don't mix. But if more disciplines would mix and learn from one another, we would get out of this rut that academia is in and that science is in. And I encourage, if you're a scientist or if you're an academic, make friends and learn what others have to say and go for it. And if you have far out ideas, that's okay. If they don't make sense to anyone else, that's okay. Keep doing your part and eventually it will all make sense to you. And on that note, law, we'll see you in the next video.